If you liked the video, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. Adeptus Custodes, What's Winning Now, Episode 9. This episode, we have an Adeptus Custodes GT winning list using the lines of the Emperor. Matthew Wood went 5-0 to win the Ironweld Warhammer 40K Summer Assault Tournament. We will take a look at the list and the path to victory. I will give a breakdown of what the lines of the Emperor can do to buff the units in his list. Finally, a general game plan for the list. I didn't write or play the list, so it's just a general game plan. Congratulations to Matthew on the Adeptus Custodes GT win. This is the list that Matthew took to the Grand Tournament, a Lines of the Emperor list. It came to 2,000 points. His warlord was Trajann. For his other characters, he had an Allarus shield captain with the Custodian axe and the Ad Monte Mortis enhancement. His other character was a Bladechampion with the Superior Creation enhancement. For his battle line, he had 3 units of 4 Custodian Guard. Each of those units had 3 Guardian Spears, 1 Vexilla, Shield, and Misericordia. For the other dash sheets, he had 2 Caladius Grav-tanks with the Twin Arachnus Heavy Blaze Cannons, a unit of 2 Allarus with the Guardian Spears to join up with that shield captain, 2 units of 3 Venatari with the Venatari Lances, a unit of 4 Witchseekers, a unit of 4 Prosecutors, and Inquisitor Draxus to join up with those Custodian Guard. The Bladechampion and Trajann will also be joining a Custodian Guard unit. That's Matthew's list. Let's move on to this path to victory. Next up, we have Matthew's path to victory. Game 1 was against the Tau, and that was a very close 76-75 win. Game 2 was against the Leagues of Votann, and that was a decisive 95-50 win. Game 3 was a Custodes against the Chaos Knights, that was a 70-58 win. Game 4 was against the Emperor's Children, another decisive win with 55-36. Finally, Game 5, and to win the tournament, was against the Space Marines, and that was a 73-56 win. Matthew Wood wins the Ironweld GT, going 5-0. He finished with a total of 369 out of 500 points. Congratulations once again to Matthew on an Adeptus Custodes GT win. On to the unit breakdown. We'll start with Trajann and the Custodian Guard. Trajann, Trey as we like to call him on the channel, Moment Shackle has to be used at the start of the fight phase, giving Trajann himself either a 2+ invulnerable or 12 attacks. Even though I still believe Trajann needs a glow up, it's nice to see him used in competitive list again. A fight on death stratagem, along with a fallback, shoot and charge stratagem, there are many ways to take advantage of Moment Shackle. Even better, use Gilded Champion to use Moment Shackle twice in a game. Trajann joined to the Custodian Guard is not as survivable as Trajann with the Wardens. It is, however, much more deadly. It is the Custodian Guard's abilities that make this unit so good in this detachment. It might even be the best detachment for the Custodian Guard. +1 to hit and +1 to the wound for shooting and melee, with the ability to reroll wounds of 1 or the wound roll if one objective we control. They have the Sentinel Storm ability for a once per game shoot twice. Some of the stronger stratagems in this detachment for this unit, maneuver and fire, fallback, shoot and charge is great in this list. Matthew has a lot of units who can re-roll wounds. Into toughness 4 and under enemies, they can shoot off the board with a +1 to the wound roll. They can do decent chip damage to tougher targets. Fallback and shoot actually means something in this detachment with this list. Next up is the Allarus shield captain with the 2 Allarus attached. This is the one unit I see in almost every Lines of the Emperor list. An Allarus shield captain with 6 attacks, strength 12, AP2, damage 4 with the Custodian axe, and reroll wounds into character, monster, and vehicle units from the attached Allarus. The Allarus shield captain becomes an S tier threat to the opponent. It also helps that this enhancement is only 10 points. On the board or in reserves waiting to use rapid ingress, the opponent has to respect this unit. We can also use the Allarus shield captain's ability to reduce all incoming damage down to 1 for a phase. With the stratagem Gilded Champion for 1 CP, we can use that Ormite and Adamantine ability twice per game. When the detachment rule for +1 to hit and +1 to the wound is paired with all of these stacking buffs and abilities, the Allarus shield captain becomes a walking tank that smashes things out of existence in combat. Defiant to the last for a 2+ fight on death for the shield captain and a 4+ for the Allarus models, makes fighting this unit in melee combat a dance with death for the opponent. They can also hand out some good anti-infantry shooting damage. +1 to the hit and wound is great on these. It makes a big difference in their shooting. Custodes have not really had a problem in the fight phase. +1 to the wound lets us be even more deadly in the shooting phase though. The spears are AP1 damage 2, that kills a Space Marine with every failed save. The ballistic grenade launcher is AP1 damage 1, great for those 1 wound, toughness 3 units. Unleash the Lions could be used in the later turns to break this unit into 3 1-model units, giving this list 3 units to bounce around the board to score some late game points. Once the big threat of the opponent's army has been dealt with, or the game is not going our way, we may want to break them up with Unleash the Lions to score some more points. Then we have the Bladechampion with the Custodian Guard. This unit has some great damage potential. Matthew's whole list is about dealing damage. His list has ways to hand out some anti-infantry and anti-tank shooting. If any of these units do not reroll wounds, it has the Lance ability. We won't go over the Custodian Guard for each of these Custodes Guard units. Let's focus on the Bladechampion for this breakdown. The Superior Creation Enhancement to stand up on death on a 2+ once per game. We could also come back into our unit if he is sniped out. Using Gilded Champion to double up on advance and charge gives this list some high charge threat range multiple times per game. It may not even attempt to charge, it is the fact that we could. The Bladechampion does not need to use the advance and charge ability, martial inspiration, until the charge phase. It allows these units to have the psychological warfare aspect. We could advance and charge when we advance, or we could save it for another turn if the advance roll was a bit low, or we don't want to make that charge this turn. Let's take a look at some of the stratagems and how they affect the Bladechampion or this unit. We have Peerless Warrior for 1 CP. Use this to have the whole unit with precision, especially strong on a Bladechampion. Select the AP3 damage 3 with devastating wounds profile. Custodian Guard giving reroll wounds of 1 or the wound roll if we're an objective we control. I have used this to tear out Technomancers out of Wraith units. Gilded Champion for 1 CP, resetting the advance and charge once per game is not a must. It is a good option to have in those games that we do want a second advance and charge. Defiant to the Last for 1 CP, our Fight on Death stratagem, 2+ for the Bladechampion and 4+ for the Custodian Guard. Fight on Death makes for a dangerous unit for the enemy to charge. Next up is another staple of the lines of the Emperor Detachment, Inquisitor Draxus and Custodian Guard. Draxus with Custodian Guard was one of our auto-include units if we wanted some anti-infantry shooting. I would say this is the best detachment for Draxus with the Custodian Guard. Now with +1 to hit and +1 to the wound from the against all odds detachment rule, the unit becomes more reliable at shooting infantry. It also gives the unit some threat into some tougher targets. All Draxus ranged attacks are damage 2 along with the Custodian Guard's spears. The Marshal Kata army rule targets the unit. If you look at the Marshal Kata army rule, it targets the unit, not the model. So as long as Draxus is attached to the Custodian Guard unit that has Marshal Kata, she also does get Custodes Karate for sustained hits 1 or lethal hits in the fight phase. If you take a look at the Shield Host Detachment rule, it actually says model with the Marshal Kata, so that's why you don't get the crits on 5s or AP1 in the Shield Host, but you will always get Marshal Kata if you have Draxus attached to a Custodian Guard or any other unit attached to a Custodian Guard unit. They are part of the unit, so they have Marshal Kata. The Detachment rule really powers up Draxus. I have killed Rhinos, Little Knights, and Dreadnoughts and more with this unit. I'm sure it did lots of work in this tournament. +1 to hit really makes a difference with her. It makes her much more reliable. Going from hitting on a 3+ to a 2+ has her ripping apart infantry units. +1 to the wound helps her psychic attack smash the enemy units into the ground. Her Dirtsinger gun is 4 attacks hitting on a 3+, so they're hitting on a 2+ now, and they're anti-infantry 4 with devastating wounds. So you get the reroll wounds from the Custodian Guard, and that's how you do so much damage with this unit. Then we have the big guns, the Caladius Grav-tanks. We are starting to see the Grav-tanks in almost every GT winning list now. There is a lot of big tough units in the top of the meta right now. The Grav-tank is how we combat those units. The Caladius Grav-tank is a Forge World Custodes tank. This is one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive, good Forge World unit we have. What makes it so good is the range profile paired with the abilities. The Twin Arachnus Blaze Cannon is 48-inch range, lethal hits into monster and vehicle units, twin-linked with D6 +2 damage. Nothing we have is close to the same reliable damage for a vehicle unit. The Land Raider can do some good anti-tank damage, actually getting wounds into the target is less reliable without the twin-linked ability that the Caladius Grav-tank has. The detachment rule excludes vehicles, or we would have 3 of these in every list. A lot of the stratagems are able to be used on the Caladius, only one seems to be useful for a big shooty tank though. Maneuver and fire for our fallback, shoot and charge, great for getting out of combat and still being able to shoot at our full 2+2 hit. Next up is our 2 units of 3 Venatari. Let's talk about the detachment rule against all odds. At first glance, +1 to hit and +1 to wound on a unit that hits on a 2+ with lance on their Venatari weapon. The +1 to the wound will help their shooting, 2 attacks, strength 4, AP 1, damage 2 on those lances. The Venatari lost a lot of their sheer killing power if they had not charged that turn, because lance you need to charge. If you charge you get +1 to the wound, but if you get charged or they're ongoing combat, you lose that +1 to the wound. 10-inch move, infantry, fly, and a built-in fallback and charge on the datasheet makes it much easier to get outside of 6 inches of other units to activate the against all odds detachment rule. One of the stronger stratagems for the Venatari is Peerless Warrior. If you need to kill a character, a 3 model of Venatari using this stratagem should be able to rip nearly any character out of a unit. Rapid ingress for free with swooping dive, and our next turn we move 10 inches, charge to take out an important character. Peerless Warrior for 1 CP on the Venatari is one of the better uses of the stratagem. The Venatari ambush attack profile pairs well with precision melee weapons. The next one is Swift as the Eagle. Our Venatari have no defensive abilities. They live and die on a 2+ save with that 4+ invulnerable. Using Swift as the Eagle for 1 CP to move the Venatari out of line of sight could save us a lot of points of dead models. I'm curious if Matthew was able to pull off any tricksy plays with this stratagem by setting a unit/units up to plan to use this stratagem. The last 2 units are the Psychona units. The first one, the Witchseekers, our best cheap unit to gain some early board control. Matthew only had 1 in his list. I'm not sure if he used it to get his expansion objective early or push towards the center. I find they are great for scouting 6 inches towards the center for turn 1, drawing aerial denial or established locus turn 1 without a cheap unit who can get to the center is kind of a bummer. +1 to the wound roll from the detachment rule can make these a bit more threatening into infantry units too. Custodes players can't go wrong with a unit of Witchseekers. The final unit of the list is the Prosecutors. The Prosecutors actually get access to the detachment rule. It does make them a fair bit more deadly. Not really a unit we take for the damage dealing though. They are mostly used to screen, gain secondary points, or hold our home objective. Currently our cheapest Custodes unit, 4 models for 40 points. Swift as the Eagle can be used to move these after being shot. Using a CP on them to do it will be situational though. If it could deny the opponent scoring, then we want to consider using this stratagem. Other than that, save the 1 CP. That's the unit breakdown for Matthew Wood's tournament winning list. Let's move on to a general game plan and some final thoughts. I will give a general game plan for this list. I did not write it or win the GT with it, so all credit goes to Matthew Wood. Deploying the 2 grav tanks in line of sight cover will help screen our backlines and keep shooting lanes from being an enemy shooting gallery. No Wardens in the list, I respect that. I knew Lions could work without using an all Wardens list. Playing this list though, the player has to be careful not to get caught in bad places. There are no Wardens to 4+ feel no pain away a failed 9-inch charge or a wrong choice. Use the shooting of the list to soften targets. Matthew's list does not need to depend only on melee. I myself have played a list similar to this. The double tap from the Custodian guard with +1 to the wound with possible rerolls. They wreck chaff, light, and medium infantry units. The opponent can't depend on using chaff to move block this list. The list will just shoot those chaff units off the board. It might work for the first turn, but this list is breaking through to the center of the board sooner than later. Lean on the detachment rule and the shooting and melee with plenty of wound rerolls in this list. Let's finish the video with some final thoughts. I really like this list. It seems like a fun list. Anytime I see GT winning lists not using Wardens, it makes me happy. Not because I hate Wardens, it's more I want to see as much list diversity as we can get. With 3 units of Custodian Guard and only 1 Bladechampion, Matthew the Wildman Wood wins a grand tournament with a much different list than any of our other lists from our What's Winning Now series. Congratulations Matthew, you make the 10,000 proud. Subscribe for weekly battle reports, list videos, and other Warhammer 40K content. Channel members gain early access to some videos and access to the channel Discord. Like always, thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by.